Authority closed session. Today's Wednesday, April 20th. My name is Wayman Furman. I'm the mayor of the city of Indio, and I will be chairing this meeting. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Present.
Councilmember Miller.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Present.
Mayor Furman.
Present.
And Councilmember Ramos Amit is absent.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is public comment. Do we have any public comment for the
There are
closed session?
none.
All right, thank you. I'll adjourn to closed session. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we will adjourn to closed session for the 6 items listed on the closed session agenda.
Thank you. We're ready to go? Yeah. All right. I'll call the order the City of Indio Joint Council Meeting and Water Authority meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. My name is Wayman Furman. I'm the mayor of the city, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Present.
Councilmember Miller.
Present.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Present.
Mayor Furman.
Present. The next item is invocation. If we have someone to do the invocation, I'll just pass this out. Okay. Thank you. If I can ask everyone to stand, please. Okay.
What a privilege it is to dedicate this beautiful setting for us here today. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we lift up our city council, our precious mayor, God, and all the city officials that are gathered here together. Give them wisdom, give them your anointing, your power, your blessing, God. And we just pray that you would be glorified here today, God. We dedicate, Lord, this meeting to you. In Jesus' name, amen and amen.
Amen. If I can ask everyone to please remain standing and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance by placing your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, the next item is item number 4, City Attorney Report on Closed Session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city council met in closed session for the items listed therein, and there's no reportable action.
Okay, the next item is item number 5, which is presentations, which is a proclamation for National Victims Week. And the week is April 24th to the 30th, 2022. You have a proclamation? Yep. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to join? We'll make it work. Okay, it says National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 24th, April 30th, 2022. Whereas the victims' right movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal levels that establish essential rights for victims. And whereas we must help victims access the justice, assistance, and support they need to rebuild their lives, acknowledging the 2022's National Crime Victims' Rights Week's theme is rights, access, equality for all victims, and whereas honoring the rights of victims, including the right to be heard and to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect, rebuilds the trust in the criminal justice and social service systems. Whereas National Crime Victims Week provides an opportunity to recommit, ensuring that accessible, appropriate, and trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Wayman Furman, Mayor of the City of Indio, along with the Indio City Council, do hereby proclaim April 24th to April 30th, 2022 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, reaffirming the City of Indio's commitment to supporting the Riverside County District Attorney's Office, Division of Victim Services and Criminal Justice Response that assists all victims of crime throughout the year, and expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response. So it's National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Thank you. That's for video.
Hello, my name is Mike Hester and I'm the Riverside County District Attorney. For over 40 years, National Crime Victims' Rights Week has challenged our criminal justice system to support victims of crime by alleviating the hurdles that prevent them from achieving justice. It is not only a time to look back and reflect on the many achievements we've made, but to take the opportunity to continue ensuring and protecting victims' rights. Victims' Rights Week over the years has remained an opportunity to not only raise awareness about violent crime and murder in our community, but to also give friends and family a chance to remember and cherish the life of their loved ones whose time on earth was cut short. For the third year in a row, Victims' Rights Week will look different than it has in the past. The COVID-19 pandemic prohibited us from gathering as we did before. The candlelight vigil events we held in the past must be planned several months in advance, and with the unpredictability of the pandemic, we were not able to hold them again this year. However, providing a time to remember those lost by violent crime remains important to us and close to my heart. Personally, there are victims and their families that I've met under unfortunate circumstances of them being victims of violent crime or losing a loved one. Victims' Rights Week is a time that I can pause and remember them. We want to provide the same opportunity to our community members. This year, we are doing so by conducting daily events during the week virtually and providing private time for the public to visit our Victim Memorial Wall, which serves as a location for friends and family to view their loved one's name and leave beautiful photos and heartfelt messages. We have maintained our commitment to ensuring that a victim's voice will be heard.
My name is Melissa Donaldson, and I'm the Director of Victim Services here in the Riverside County District Attorney's Office. Today marks the beginning of National Crime Victims' Rights Week 2022. I would like to share what virtual events we'll be putting on for the community. Tuesday, we start with a new program called Stories. It stands for Stories Told or Read in Empowering Spaces. The mission of Stories is to empower those impacted by trauma by using art and to raise awareness through the power of storytelling. There'll be an exhibition throughout the week showcasing survivor art. Wednesdays, we're bringing awareness to the impact sexual assault has on victims and our county. We're partnering with Riverside University Health Systems, Molina Healthcare, and the Safe Family Justice Centers to host a broad drive for sexual assault survivors. Evidence collection during a sexual assault exam is a crucial part of the forensic medical examination and usually includes keeping undergarments for the biological evidence that can be found on them. The purpose of this multi-agency bra drive is to have the ability to provide a replacement bra to the victim when the exam is completed and also to bring awareness. On Thursday, you're going to see our fabulous facility dog, Canine Rachel. You will see and hear about the amazing work she does with the abused children we serve. The comfort she provides to the children in court helps them cope with the trauma they have endured and helps them tell their story. We end the week by honoring and memorializing those who have tragically lost their lives to crime by sharing each and every name. We know being a victim of a crime can be catastrophic to you and your family. Here at the Riverside County DA's office, we strive to not only hold those who commit crimes accountable, but also to provide victims of crime with resources, support, and guidance as we help families navigate the criminal justice system. A victim's voice will be heard.
Wow. Thank you to our partners at the Riverside County District Attorney's Office and all of their staff and support staff who support and advocate for our victims, and not only our victims, their families as well, and also seek justice in those crimes against folks. So thank you to our partners at the District Attorney's Office. Okay, so we will move forward to item number 6, which is report on City Council, external and internal boards. If Councilmember Amit is ready, we can start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening.
Okay, thank you. We can move over to Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one of my committees was busy or was active was Sunline Transit. City manager and I met with Lauren Skyver and her team about the short-term plan for Sunline Bus and and what it looks like. They're looking to upgrade their facility there off Highway 111, at least beautify the front of it, and then start to utilize more of it, including hydrogen cell fueling station. But they also were, we broached with them some of the shelters. We have 89 stops in the city of Indio. About 33 of them are sheltered, and about 29 of them, I believe, if the city manager and I was correct, to have shelters on them right now. So they're looking to get more, but they're just not in availability to be able to do it. So we're looking to see how we can do that. And as we get more development, to make sure that COD or other places are carving out areas that are safe to be able to put not only the bus stop, but also a shelter there to make sure that we're able to utilize it, especially in the heat when they're talking about it. And then they were also open to helping us with our transportation center, including housing and putting a hub there to maybe move some of theirs over and leave the maintenance over off Highway 111 and move the route over to there. So they were open to that. It's something I'm sure the city manager and staff will talk to them about, but it's a great opportunity. I know they're doing it in the city of Coachella. Could be well received for us to be able to help utilize and help with a partner there to lower some of the cost down to the city of Indio and get transportation and multimodal opportunities into the city of Indio. So that was very positive. We had the ribbon cutting for the beautiful art piece there, Dr. Carry On, today, and I'm sure the rest of my fellow council members, everybody was there. So it was great to see. I mean, it's amazing what we're able to do. I mean, everybody knows about the Coachella Valley Music and Art Festival. What they don't really realize that there's millions of dollars worth of art that Golden Voice does. It really is an art festival. At the same time, it's just not about music. And that art piece and the one right over here, the cacti right in downtown, are an example of that. And we're hoping for many more pieces, but great to see. And Dr. Carry On Park, I'll leave that to the mayor, as well as my council members talk more about it. And then we had the Fine Food Bank. We had their telethon. I've helped every year to be able to support that great organization. They were able to raise $250,000 during the telethon. We answered the phone, and our community as a whole, $25 is about 100 meals. So you got to think, well, how many meals that accomplished there. So my hat's off to all the other council members and everybody that donated, our community as a whole, to help support this organization. And then lastly, Coachella 1's done. Got 2 more, so hold on. But it's great to see all the individuals out here. Really, with the amount of people there, the crime was down very much so. Our staff, our public safety, our public works, and everybody did a great job of making sure that the impacts were minimal to our community. But at the same time, it was great to see all the people back in our community spending money, not only in the city of Indio, but through the whole Coachella Valley, because, we really are a region, and not everybody that lives in Indio works in Indio. So all the other places that they work at, or they're getting extra hours, extra jobs, extra tips, and you can't buy this kind of actual publicity that we're getting from being the city of festivals and Coachella Fest. So my hat's off to everyone. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Holmes.
Very good, Councilmember Miller. I'll just add on to that. My hat's off to everyone on these concerts. It is no small feat putting these concerts together. And after a 2-year hiatus, it just watching it all come together. I think I want to commend everyone for doing a great job. Just a reminder, we're fresh out of COVID, and just finding personnel to staff many of the positions has been a challenge. And so we have some brand new people out there, really trying very hard to make things work. I know that there's also a staff shortage, and I just thought it was awesome the way it all kind of came together. Yes, there are a few challenges, but it all came together, and it's makes me very proud to have this group and these concerts and this art in our community. I just want to remind everyone to support local. It's what everybody's doing. A couple of other things. Coachella Valley Conservation Commission is the one commission that was held this past week, and really just a couple of things with respect to that. That really the mission of the Cbcc is to protect our land, wildlife, stewardship, climate change, sustainability, and really to look at the areas of land that are conserved. And it's not just the land that we conserve, that we have conserved and purchased, but it's also the maintenance of that land. It takes a tremendous amount of time and money to maintain it. We talked about Tamarisk Removal, which that is such an invasive species. And as everybody know, it consumes enormous amounts of water on a daily basis, gallons and gallons and gallons. And so we have our organization has embarked on a task to severely remove where possible. And a lot of times it's nearly impossible to remove them, but to remove them to the best of our ability. And other invasive species, it's an environmental issue. And for us to remove as many of the invasive species as we possibly can helps for the native species to flourish and for the conservation of our lands to be maintained. Lots of milestones with respect to that. Initially, things were a little bit, had a little bit of a slow start, but we're full speed ahead. We continue to look at acquiring lands, but our focus at this point really is to make sure that we maintain all of the lands that we are conserving. And yes, I was at Dr. Carry-On Park. It was nice. It was nice to see everybody there early this morning. And it was just a beautiful piece. It's so nice to see the art pieces throughout our community and look forward to seeing a lot more. Mayor, that's it.
Oh, thank you for your report. Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this month, I attended the Southern California Association of Governments Energy and Environment Commission. We discussed the SCAG Climate Action Resolution quarterly update. Last year in January, SCAG declared a climate change crisis in Southern California. So now SCAG has worked to develop a regional resilience framework to help the region plan and prepare for a changing climate and other potential near and long-term disruptions to Southern California. They've also been working to initiate a regional climate planning network that will provide technical assistance for local climate adaptation and mitigation initiatives. Other work has involved supporting local jurisdictions with climate planning and evaluating economic and job creation benefits of climate adaptation and mitigation practices. We also talked about the draft 2022 South Coast Air Quality Management Plan. Some takeaways from that presentation were that the SoCal area, LA area, has the worst ozone levels in the country. These levels are decreasing in Los Angeles and the Coachella Valley, but the decrease has leveled off and some has increased recently. And so most of our ozone here actually comes from LA, kind of drifts in from the coast. Currently, we need 73% reduction by 2037 to meet 2037 federal standards. And to get to this point, it's estimated that residential emissions will need to be reduced by 70%. And that's going to be very tough to get to. And so right now, there are no current strategies for aircraft NOx reductions. Electrification for small airplanes and hydrogen fuel cell for large airplanes is being experimented, but it's still many, many years away before implementation. Ships, which cause a lot of the ozone there on the coast, are looking at hydrogen and even using new sails for auxiliary power. Currently, the Coachella Valley does not meet the ozone standards, and we're going to be bumped up to extreme non-attainment for 2037. And there are 4 local sources that will be impacted. Last week, I also attended the Coachella Valley Association of Governments Energy and Environment Commission. We received an $80,000 grant from the county, which is for the Smart Scalping and Landscape Certification Program. This is an educational program required for those receiving a new landscaping business license at cities throughout the Coachella Valley. This helps reduce the amount of dust generated by lawn scalping using new techniques for planting winter ryegrass. And this reduces dust particles by 99%. We also voted to keep the PM10 street sweeping program running. This is a street sweeper that sweeps the larger highways that have high traffic on them, and they clear out the dirt overnight so that as people drive over the highways during the day, they're not breaking down the sand and creating finer particles in the air. We also discussed the new automated streamlining permitting program for rooftop solar. The app is called Solar App. It's free for local jurisdictions. Beaumont and Menifee are currently piloting this program, and there are grants to cover staff time and contracting services. Applications are available by June, and there's also a Senate Bill 379 that is currently moving through the state legislature to require this program for cities over a certain size of residents. I also attended the ribbon cutting for Sarbala K this morning at the Dr. Carry-On Park. The new towers are looking great, and the landscaping is looking great as well. So I wanted to thank our staff and commissioners, and also thank the artists Francis Correa and Golden Voice for the great work in finishing this project for the John Nobles community. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This morning, I did have a Homelessness Committee meeting. I was absent to attend some of our functions, but prior to that meeting, I'm part of a subcommittee for the Cbcc Homelessness Committee. And one of the topics that are in our forefront right now is California's initiative to implement a care court, and also the county through the district attorney's office to implement homelessness court. And, to speak on that, that's basically an initiative to assist folks who do not have the mental capacity or capability to make decisions, who are unsheltered on our streets, to get help. And now the state has recognized that. Our county is actually moving at a faster pace to get these folks the assistance they need. And whether it's mental health services, substance abuse services, or just housing. And, we all live in our cities, and this is not unique to the city of Indio. This is a countrywide issue with unsheltered folks who have a plethora of issues. And I think it's come to the point now where we have to be honest about that and to get folks help and actually assist them in making those decisions. So those are some of the discussions that are being had in the realm of homelessness. And here in the city of Indio, we're even asking folks to really collaborate with our faith-based community and our services that we already have in place to assist the unsheltered and folks who need assistance, rather than going into these encampments, which could be dangerous, or going to certain areas of our city to provide those services or take food or clothes. We much rather have you work with us, work with our services, work with our county, so we can maximize those resources and not have so many moving pieces. So homelessness and unsheltered folks is a very serious issue we're dealing with right now. We have folks who have challenges out there who can make those decisions. So that's from the state and also from the county. Recently, I met with the Governor Newsom's district director, and she briefed me on the governor's initiative on care court. So that was very interesting. Angle that we never entertained, but I think it's the right move in our communities. And I also attended a press conference for the Clean California State Initiative. We received a grant of approximately $5 million from California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and those funds will be going to beautify Jackson Street and Kenner Avenue from to Avenue 45. And so that's another great thing that we were able to do. Mayor Pro Tem talked about some grants. We received $8.5 million grant for the Indio Sports Park. So now the community is getting another grant of $5 million to utilize those funds to create some thoroughfares and sidewalks and shade for those families and students, walking and commuting to school on a daily basis. So it's another positive note in Old North Indio to, invest in that community. And from there, I was there this morning for the ribbon cutting of Sabala K. As you can see, my face is a little dark from the sun. I was out there all day, but it was a great event. Thank you to our partners over at Golden Voice, for making this happen. Thank you to our staff for working alongside them. Thank you to our art commission for getting this through. When we have these projects, especially one of this nature, it takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make it happen and to see it come to fruition and to be able to see that structure from the other side of town as being one of the highest structures in our community. It's a great thing. And it's also part of the economic development and redevelopment of the Desert Garden and John Noble's community. And we talked about grants in Old North Indio. We're talking about the Indio Marketplace and Sabala K. These are just ways that you're seeing in front of you that these communities are being uplifted. So thank you to everyone who made that happen. And right after the Sabala K ribbon cutting ceremony, we had the Mopius conference, which we've had here downtown. We did it online with our partners over at Eventscape last year during COVID. Well, this year they were at Sabala K, and they had guest speakers. And the base of the conversation was, environmental sustainability, water conservation, and community equality. And it was a great, great event. The guest speakers all the way from Brooklyn, New York. We had a council member from Brooklyn, New York. speaking about some of the challenges and great things they're doing on the other side of the country. So it was great to have our yak there. Our yak will be tonight at the concert. They told me they wouldn't make it to the meeting today, but we had our Riverside County yak there as well. We had some community leaders, community members, and so it was a great event to have during spring break for our youth. And like I mentioned, we won't take too many of your time because we do have a concert that's going to be going on right next door to us. And that's the Cella event that we collaborated with Golden Voice to bring this event from the Riverside County Fairgrounds, which was a ticketed event, to our community to make it free, to show appreciation, and also to bring the community to be part of these events. You know, not everyone wants to go into the Polo Grounds and be part of the large festival, but you're able to walk from your community and take part in a concert and festival and picnic out and listen to some music from 5 o'clock this evening to 10 o'clock tonight. So, and once again, thank you to our partners at Golden Voice. Thank you to our city manager and staff for working very fast on this. You know, I brought this idea to the city manager and to the chief, and, you know, there was some heads being scratched, and, you know, but they made it happen. And so thank you, city manager and Chief Washburn, for working so fast on this. And that will conclude my report. And we will move on to item number 7, which is city manager reports and information.
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned, the staff team has done a fabulous job on all that's going on, but the festival, my first year at Coachella, was fascinated and amazed by all that goes on behind the scenes to help make it happen. So kudos to the team that helped support our partners at Golden Voice and their festival. Debuting at the festival was the new Indio logo letter sign. So I sat and watched hundreds, and I'm sure there were thousands of attendees at the festival take photos in front of the new Indio letter sign, another version of which is also now installed downtown. And just about every time you drive by, somebody's standing in front of it taking a picture. So we know there have been a lot of impressions of the logo throughout the world, for that matter. We just received word today that our housing element has been approved. So the state housing Department of Housing and Community Development, we're only the 10th city that has had their element approved, the first in the Coachella Valley. So certainly kudos again to the staff team that helped make that happen, and your approval, council members. Finally, there has been this ongoing discussion with the Imperial Irrigation District relative to how we can expand the much needed electrical infrastructure in the valley, specifically to the cities of La Quinta, Indio, and Coachella. As city managers and as the committee, the Coachella Valley Energy Commission, we've been met with the IED board yesterday, all seem supportive of this proposal that would allow us to proceed with some much needed infrastructure. At the suggestion of the city manager in La Quinta, he'd like maybe the first, I'm not sure, but to have the 3 cities have a joint council meeting. So his suggestion is on May 9th, have all meet virtually, all 15 elected officials of the 3 cities, to talk about this very critical matter of IAD and our electrical infrastructure. So I know Shelley's been getting word out to you and see if we can confirm that meeting. So with that, Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you, City Manager. And we will move on to item number 8, which is consent calendar. Are we okay there? Yeah. If I can get a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Miller. What is it? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem. Motion, and a second by Councilmember Miller. Is okay. Could I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes,
I, with the exception that I am abstaining on item 8.9, please.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Furman.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
And what's our
sorry,
exception?
Go ahead.
And then that item would also would be a recusal because Councilmember Holmes owns property within, I think, 5 to 1,000 feet of that area.
Mhm.
Do you also do Oasis School?
I will recuse on that.
And then also if, I'm sorry, that's on the next item.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. And then before we move on, I just want to bring attention to a couple of items where after it's passed, it's very exciting. Item 8.9 is approval of a building lease agreement with Gambino's Creperie for downtown. I mean, that's just another business that we're bringing downtown. And I thank you to the staff for working hard on this and bringing this company, this business downtown Indio. So this is something that we look forward to in the future. And if you scroll down a little bit more, the public safety campus awarding the grants for these contracts, that just shows that the ball is rolling for this public safety campus that is much, much needed. And that's going to not only aid our firefighters and our police officers and support staff, it's also going to help us with the recruiting efforts. I mean, so this is just great. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for these items that are on the consent calendar. So moving forward, now we have item 9, which is administrative items. So item 9.1 is ordinance number 1776, adopting a military equipment use policy and ordinance with Assembly Bill 481, and that will be handled by our police chief, Michael Washburn.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mike Washburn. I'm your police chief. Tonight, as a result of passage of Assembly Bill 481, we'll be asking you to approve the police department's military equipment policy. I've asked our SWAT commander, Lieutenant Doug Haynes, to handle this item. And after he's done with his presentation, we'll answer any questions that you may have. Lieutenant Haynes.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. I appreciate you having me here tonight. As the chief mentioned, I'm here tonight to introduce Ordinance 1776, adopting a military equipment use policy in accordance with Assembly Bill 481. Give us just a second. We're going to switch the PowerPoint over to my PowerPoint. There we go. Okay, thank you. So a little roadmap of how we got here. On September 30th of 2021, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 481, which became effective on January 1st of this year. It essentially gave departments and law enforcement agencies until May 1st to establish a use policy for existing specialized police equipment, as well as a policy on how to purchase new equipment in the future. So AB 481 identifies certain specialized law enforcement equipment as military equipment and requires oversight from City Council for the purchase and use of what the bill has deemed military equipment. Now, you'll hear that quite a bit throughout the ordinance, military equipment. The term's a little bit of a misnomer. All of the equipment that's owned and purchased by the Indio Police Department, as well as what's used by surrounding law enforcement agencies, is equipment that's designed for use by civilian law enforcement and not necessarily the military. So it comes from law enforcement vendors and it's designed for law enforcement in civilian departments. The law requires that the Indio Police Department create a use policy that's been adopted by City Council after holding a public meeting to seek the public's input. That's the reason why we're here tonight. The use policy is required to be posted on the department's website for 30 days prior to holding the public meeting. Our proposed policy was posted on our website on March 15th at the Indio Police Department. And as of tonight, we haven't had any public comments or inquiries. So the purpose of the ordinance is to seek approval and support from the City Council for the acquisition and deployment of current and future specialized police equipment. It's also to consider the public's concerns about safety, civil rights, and the public's welfare. It's also to approve the military equipment use policy. That's included in your packet, as well as the inventory, which establishes ongoing standards and safe de-escalation techniques for police equipment and the application consistent with Assembly Bill 481. And lastly, I'll touch on it later, but once a year, Ordinance 1776 and the use policy will be submitted to City Council for an annual review and approval if any changes need to be made. So there's a lot of purposes for specialized police equipment. Number one is the preservation of human life. That's always most important. Use of the equipment allows for the safe and effective use of de-escalation tactics. The equipment helps with high-risk apprehensions. And not only tactical teams, but our patrol officers use less lethal use of force options quite frequently. As a less lethal option, many of those items are listed on the inventory. Some of the vehicles can be used for search and rescue operations and evacuating victims from hazardous situations. That could be a natural disaster. It could be something such as an active shooter type scenario. And lastly, it reduces liability of physical injury to the public and department personnel. Specialized police equipment is already in use by the Indio Police Department. It's been in use for years and years. And all law enforcement agencies use specialized police equipment or military equipment as listed in the Assembly Bill. It's needed to stop escalating violent situations from becoming a threat to the safety of responding law enforcement personnel, the public, and the involved subjects. It also helps us limit high-risk encounters with armed violent suspects. So allied agencies throughout Riverside County frequently rely on assistance from each other. That's done through mutual aid agreements. So when Assembly Bill 481 came out, it was discussed in great length at RCOPS, which is the association for all the chiefs and sheriffs here in the Riverside County. RCOPS agreed that they would accept the use of each law enforcement agency's military equipment use policy as related to any enforcement action here in the county. All the policies are very similar and uses pretty much the same language. So the approval process is the adoption of Ordinance 1776 at a regular public meeting, and the City Council determines the following 4 items. The military or specialized police equipment outlined in IPD Policy 708, which is attached, is necessary because there is no reasonable alternative that can achieve the same objective of officer and civilian safety. The second thing that needs to be looked at is the proposed use policy. Will it safeguard the public's welfare, safety, civil rights, and civil liberties? The third thing to look at is, if purchasing equipment, determine if the equipment is reasonably cost effective compared to available alternatives that can achieve the same objective of officer or civilian safety. Tonight, we're not coming to you asking for any purchases at the time. Everything listed is items that are already currently in use and we own. In the future, if we need to obtain items or purchase items that are on the list, it'll go before council for approval. And lastly, the fourth part is to determine if existing equipment complies with the use policy, and if not, remedy any non-conforming issues and ensure future compliance. So at this time, there's no non-compliance issues that we're aware of. So our recommendations tonight are to formally adopt Ordinance 1776 and approve the police department's current inventory of specialized police equipment and adopt its military equipment policy by ordinance as required by AB 481. After the approval process, there's an annual report which will be submitted within a year of the approval. It'll be submitted to City Council summarizing the use of the equipment, any concerns, findings from any internal audits, which is set forth in our attached policy, and an updated inventory on the equipment that we have and what we anticipate replacing in the future year. That annual report is posted on the department's website for public awareness, and AB 41 also requires the department to hold a community engagement meeting where we can discuss, answer any questions about the equipment, what it's used for, why we need it, and things like that. And that'll happen every year while this law is in effect. That pretty much sums up Ordinance 1776. My presentation, the Chief Washburn and I are available for any questions if you do have any or any comments.
Thank you, Lieutenant, and thank you, Chief, for bringing this to us. I went through it, and I also met with the Chief about this. And all departments are going through this, so this is not something that's unique to the City of Indio. So I appreciate the hard work that went behind this. I'd like to open up for my council if you have any questions or comments about this item.
I don't have any questions. The only comment is thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the knowledge and thoroughness of this. Thank you very much. I was not aware of all of this, so it's very informative.
Thank you.
I'm more than happy to make a motion if there's no one else. So I'll recommend to waive full reading of ordinance number 1776, an ordinance of the City of Indio adopting a military equipment use policy in accordance with Assembly Bill 481, introduce the ordinance by title only and request the city clerk to read the title.
And I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilman Miller, a second by Holmes. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes,
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Furman.
Aye. Motion
Motion.
passes.
And I will now read the ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 1776, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Indio, California, adopting a military equipment use policy in accordance with Assembly Bill 481.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there we go. Oh, yeah, 492. Thank you. So we move up to item 9.2, which is $1.5 million purchase and sale agreement with SLRGR Development Incorporated for the property located at 45145 Oasis Street in fine and conformity with the general plan. And this will be handled by our Director of Economic Development, Mr. Carl Morgan.
And if I can interject, I need to recuse myself to the fact that I own property within 1,000 feet. So
Your excuse.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, Carl Morgan, Economic Development Director. As the mayor mentioned, this is a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Indio and SLGR Development, Inc. It's a purchase and sale agreement. This is the map showing the property. It's located at the southwest corner of Miles and Oasis. It is 4 parcels. 33,000 square feet of building consisting of 2 buildings, a parking lot to the north of that building, and then the vacant lot to the west across the alley. Okay. Still keyboard. Oh, thank you. The salient points of the PSA, the reason for the purchase is a potential relocation site for our library. Those portions of the building not used by the library would be marketed and for future retail and restaurant uses. The funding source for the purchase of the property is the Coronavirus American Rescue Act, or ARPA funds. And the recommendation this evening is to approve the purchase and sale agreement with SLGR Development, Inc. for the property located at 45145 Oasis Street in the amount of $1.5 million. There's also a $1,350 escrow, splitting the escrow costs for that, and authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the agreement in the form approved by the city manager and city attorney, and find the sale of the properties in conformance with the general plan, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the sale. A slide that I think glossed over is there's the 90-day due diligence period where we're going to bring a structural engineer in to check out the building and to give us an assessment of that property. So we have 90 days to do that. And then we have the right to either move forward with the transaction or not, depending on what the findings are. And that concludes the staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Some more activity going on downtown, we see, right?
Yes.
So I have no questions. I open up to the council for any questions or comments for Mr. Morgan.
No, I don't have any questions or comments. I think it's a great opportunity for us to move our library, or a great property to purchase, especially with all the new development going on in the old town, downtown area. So I think it's a great opportunity for us and fair price. So I'm more than happy to make a recommendation unless somebody wants to have any other comments. Okay. I want to make a motion to approve the purchase and sale agreement with SLGR Development, Inc. for the property located at 45145 Oasis Street in the amount of $1.5 million. Authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the agreement in the form approved by the city manager and city attorney. Find the sale of the property is conformant with the general plan, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the sale.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilmember Miller, second by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz. Could you vote, please?
Councilmember Miller,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Ami,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz,
Aye.
Mayor Furman.
Aye. Motion passes. We ask Councilmember Holmes back in, please. Welcome back. We missed you. So next we'll move on to item number 10, which are public hearing items. 10.1 is acceptance of fiscal year 2021-2022 supplemental law enforcement services account, SLESA funds in the amount of $140,360 and approval of the enclosed expenditure plan. And this will be handled by Chief Washburn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Mike Washburn. I'm still your Chief of Police. This is a routine item that by law requires a public hearing. Tonight, we're asking that City Council accept the 21-22 supplemental law enforcement services funds from the county in the amount of $140,360. We'll use those funds for equipment, services, supplies, and overtime as outlined in Attachment A. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, this is a public hearing item, Chief. So what I'll do is I'll open the public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have anyone online for public comment?
There are none.
We have no one online for public comment. I have nobody in a queue with request to speak. So I will close the public hearing and open it up to the council for any questions or comments of the chief. Or a motion.
Okay. I'll do this one. I'll make a motion to approve the Riverside County Sheriff's Department RSO distributes SLESA funds to local cities in monthly installments to support frontline police services. The city processes using SLESA funds to support the city's 800 MHS MEGS public safety radio system, purchase public safety equipment and supplies, offset police training costs, personnel costs, and pay for the other law enforcement services fiscal year 2021 SLESA funds with the incorporated into next fiscal year's budget.
And I will second that.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Miller and a second by Councilmember Holmes. Can I vote, please?
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
I apologize. Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Ami.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
And Mayor Furman.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. So we'll move on to item 10.2, which is ordinance number 1777, amending chapter 159 zoning regulations and adopting a new section 159.49 pertaining to the development of unzoned properties which within the former Pacific Indio properties development agreement area. And this will be handled by our Director of Community Development, Kevin Snyder.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. As Mayor said, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. The Chief said he'd have the shortest presentation tonight. I will not, but I will try to keep it brief so that as I know that we have other things planned for the evening. This particular item pertains to something you actually saw back in January. So back in January, you were presented with two ordinance actions pertaining to the Pacific Indio's Properties Development Agreement. As the council may remember, back in the early 90s, the city executed a development agreement with Pacific Indio Properties that governed properties in North Indio between around the Monroe Street and Jackson Street area, that swath of land north of of Interstate 10. That development agreement was in existence for many years, and it was extended multiple times. And then on January 19, 2022, it was set to expire. However, the city worked with several property owners out there to extend for those property owners the terms of the development agreement for 18 months. However, not all properties in that area were covered by this. That resulted in council passage of Ordinance 1774, which was an urgency ordinance to address the fact that we had unzoned properties in that area. The reason that that is an issue is because if there is development interest in those properties, by not having them zoned properly, those properties could not proceed forward. So council took action on an urgency ordinance to, in essence, establish for a limited period of time a new development regulation in Chapter 159 of the city's municipal code that governed how development might occur on those properties, and that was through a development agreement. But as I mentioned, the urgency ordinance is intended to be for a limited period of time. So we then took the new code back through the normal process, which included going to your planning commission. So this is the language on the screen that was considered under the urgency ordinance and that was brought to your planning commission. So the planning commission, and again, this is the area that we're talking about north of Interstate 10 in the Monroe and Jackson Street area. So your planning commission held a public hearing on February 23rd, 2022, and they recommended to the city council that you consider permanently adopting this new code section 159.419. And so this evening, we are before you after doing a duly noticed public hearing for all affected property owners in the area, as well as citywide. We did a little bit differently because we anticipated that there's more than 1,000 interested parties. We actually ran a 1/8 of a page display ad in the Desert Sun so that there was significant public awareness about this. So this evening, we are asking council to consider taking action on ordinance 1777, which would permanently adopt this new code section into the municipal code. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions before you open for public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snyder, for your presentation. This is a public hearing item. So I'll open a public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have anyone online?
There are none.
We have no one online for public comment. I have no request to speak. So I will close the public hearing and open it up to council for questions and comments of staff or a motion.
I'll motion to waive full reading of ordinance number 1777, an ordinance of the city amending chapter 159 zoning regulations of the municipal code and adopting a new section 159.419 pertaining to the development of unzoned properties. Introduce the ordinance by title only and request the city clerk read the title.
I'll second that. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz and a second by Councilmember Miller. Could I have a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Furman.
Aye, the motion passes, and I've had the clerk read the.
I will now read the ordinance into the record. Ordinance number 1777, an ordinance of the city of Indio, California, amending chapter 159 zoning regulations of the municipal code and adopting a new section 159.419 pertaining to the development of unzoned properties within the former Pacific Indio Properties Development Agreement area.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Snyder, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. And we'll try to keep this presentation brief as well. It may take a little bit longer than the last one.
So do I need to read it? I could read the next item and I'll hand it back over to you.
My apologies. Jumped right in there. I was trying to get it done. My
ready to go, right? That's okay. I commend that. The next item is item 10.3, resolution number 10276, adopting a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, EA 21045556, and resolution number 10277, approved and tentative track map 38072 TTM 2108048 to subdivide 38 acres of the Cocoa Pond single-family residential project located northeast of the Avenue 50 in Jackson intersection. And this will be handled by Director of Community Development, Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Yeah, let's do a do-over. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
So this evening, the staff is bringing before you a proposed tentative track map and also an environmental assessment. This is for a proposed new single-family development in the city of Indio. As indicated by the mayor earlier, this would be in the area northeast of Avenue 50 and Jackson Street. This map gives you the approximate location. Some of you may be familiar with this because in 2015, a project called Las Plumas was approved by the city, but that project never went forward. So the applicant for this particular project, Cocoa Palms LLC, has resubmitted for a tentative tract map consideration for a project that would entail 173 single-family residential units. They would be comprised of 1-story and 2-story units. And there will be overall density of about 4.5 dwelling units to acre, which is consistent with both the general plan as well as the existing zoning for the property. The slide in front of you shows the proposed layout of this tentative tract map. Access off of, primary access will be off of Jackson. The next slide shows you the phasing schedule. There are 5 phases of the project shown. This particular slide just shows you the proposed lot layout with the residences on them. The next couple of slides are just going to give you kind of an illustrative overview of the housing model types. And in this particular instance, your planning commission did conduct a public hearing on this item as directed by city code as well as state law. That public hearing was conducted on March 23rd. They did recommend to the city council on a 3-0 vote to approve and adopt the mitigated negative declaration, as well as to approve the tentative tract map. So there are 2 issues that are going to be before the council this evening that you will hear from the applicant potentially on. We hope on the first one we've resolved the issue. We're in coordination with the applicant, but there is the issue of the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of Avenue 49 and Jackson Street. And we've been working with the applicant on that. Initially, the condition read that it had to be within prior to the issuance of the 100th building permit or within 2 years from the date of the subdivision development agreement, whichever came first. The applicant asked for additional consideration of time, up to 3 years instead of 2 years, and the city engineer reviewed that request and found it reasonable in terms of the reasonable timeframe to initiate site development, but also ensure that the traffic signal went in at an appropriate time to address any potential impacts resulting from traffic from the project. So within a resolution that is presented on the tentative tract map, you will find that states the 3 years. And as we understand, the applicant's team is in support of that. The other issue that you will hear about this evening, and this will probably not be an issue where the staff and the applicant are in alignment, is a requirement to install sidewalks on one side of the internal private street network. As I mentioned, this is a 173 unit project. It is intended to be gated, and the internal street network is intended to be private. When you adopted the General Plan 2040 on September 18, 2019, you adopted a number of policies relating to this particular project. One of them is policy LU 7.5, which directs that there should be installation of sidewalks on a minimum of one side of the private street network. So in this particular instance, when this project was reviewed by staff, when it was brought to Planning Commission, we reviewed it and recommended a condition of approval for consistency with the general plan. As the council is aware from other projects, but to remind the council and members of the public, when you're reviewing a tentative tract map, you are reviewing the project for consistency with the adopted general plan, and that includes the adopted policies. So in this particular instance, the applicant is going to be seeking relief from that installation of the sidewalk on one side of the street. Staff believes that it promotes a safe pedestrian environment with connectability throughout the project. The applicant is going to present to you, and I will let them speak for themselves, but because they put it in a memo to staff, I'm just going to highlight that their position is this is a gated community. There'll be impacts on the usable front yards of those lots that are affected by the installation of the sidewalk, and they have alternate ideas, including signage and coach lights, to offset any impacts for not having that sidewalk on one side of the street. So again, staff is recommending that this particular condition approval 8.29 be retained, but obviously the applicant will talk to you about their feelings about that. So this evening, staff is recommending that council adopt resolution number 10276. This pertains to the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And staff is also recommending adopting resolution number 10277, approving tentative tract map 38072 that would result in the proposed subdivision I just described. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions council might have before the public hearing.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Applicant here.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members, city manager. It's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you. Really, first want to compliment the staff. They did a great job. And oftentimes you get down to where there's just a differing opinion about one particular issue. And here we have a differing opinion about the LU 75 and how to be implemented. What concerned me at first was, could LU 7.5, if there's sufficient showing, be waived? And the reason that concerned me was I wasn't sure. So I did some research, and actually Kevin Snyder is the one that answered that question for me. We always do a transcript of the planning commission. It was Commissioner Valdez who was really raised a question and said, I might be interested in this if there was sufficient lighting. And so we thought about that. And then Planning Director Snyder was asked about this question, and he said that the condition could be waived, and it was at page 10 of the transcript. And so I took that to mean that we have a fighting chance. So I'm here with my fighting chance. And let me tell you why I think we have a better than fighting chance. This project is going to be gated. There's only going to be 173 units. And most of the people that are going to live here are going to be families. The concern was walking on the streets might be dangerous. And that there was, at least from Commissioner Valdez's point of view, a lighting issue. So the way we addressed the lighting issue was to provide for, and I can never say this word correctly, photovoltaic, the ones that come on after the sun. And so what we did is we put in each garage, we put 2 of those carriage lights. They'll come on. The second thing we did was look at curvier linear streets. These are curvier linear streets. In other words, there's not a main drag where you could race down the road. The third item was that this is really, since it's a gated community, it's just going to be the residents. And I don't think the residents, when they have families, are going to be interested in going really fast down the street. The third item, or fourth item, was we could gate this. Obviously, it's gated, but we can also provide for signage that is decorative as well as very public oriented. And that signage could be subject to the approval of Kevin's group and of course the city engineer. And then we looked at what else we could do. And we realized that there's some things that come into play with regard to this project, with regard to the streets themselves, and we can lower the speed limit. We could provide for a lower than normal speed limit. Now, remember, these streets are 41 feet wide, so we could go 15 miles per hour or 25 miles per hour, again, subject to the approval of the staff. Finally, we looked at this, and I read your land use planning sections, especially 6, and I read some of the other interesting comments because I've worked on land use plans for other cities. You want sustainability and walkability, and in effect, when you have families, you want playability. And you have these front yards with no sidewalk. You increase the opportunity for what I call talking spaces among families, and you give the opportunity for at least some front yard play, maybe rear yard play, who knows, but with signage, with lights that are on, and with the fact it's gated and there's only 173 homes and the streets are curvier linear, I think those all add up in the favor of not having sidewalks. Sidewalks to me would detract from this home enclave. And so all that being said, there was one other thing we could do. and I will tell you, it's called speed hump, not speed bump. And speed humps are different. They're softer. They're not these things that are just planted into the road, but they make cars slow down. But again, that's something we could do. The other thing we could look at is decreasing the width of the street to 36 feet. But what we're trying to do is create a neighborhood here where people feel like they can talk to folks, they can play in their yards, and we don't really need any more concrete. So that's the reason we thought of this. And we think we were on solid ground for safety reasons and for sustainability reasons and for collegiality among the families there that live there. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, it's just a differing opinion. That your staff is very professional, very good. We just have a different opinion. And I read section 6 or the land use 6. And to me, it just pointed out that we're not really wacky in what we're asking for. Sometimes lawyers can be wacky. I just want you to know that.
All right. Thank you for your comments, sir. This is a public hearing item, so I'll open the public hearing and ask the clerk, do we have any online?
There are none.
There are none online. I have no requests to speak, so I will close the public hearing and open it up to council for questions and comments of either the staff or applicant.
I have questions of staff. Mr. Schneider, I don't have a map in front of me of what the project looks like, but what's the typical residential street width?
So a private street width per adopted engineering standard would be 41 feet wide from curb to curb.
But that would also include, or would it not, sidewalks beyond the curb?
Sidewalk would the sidewalk would be beyond the curb, council member, and it would be a minimum of 5 feet wide.
So what's the trigger for only one side of the street to be sidewalk versus both sides to be sidewalk?
It's actually written into the policy that the city council adopted, policy LU-7.5, that specified a minimum of one side of the street.
Okay, so all staff is doing is recommending the minimum.
Correct. And as the city manager just pointed out, this again is a private street network internally within the project.
Okay, so again, are the street standards different for the private internal streets?
The street standards, we do have a private street standard adopted as an engineering standard. And for this particular instance, it is 41 feet. Sometimes you will see a different width, perhaps a little bit wider for public streets, taking into account the public sidewalk sections that typically occur with public streets. So you might see a wider width of approximately 50 feet. But again, the engineering standard for private streets is 41 feet. This particular policy would add an additional 5 feet of area beyond the 41 feet by having a minimum of 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street.
Okay, so the only areas that we do have the minimum 41 street without sidewalks are the country estates where it's dark skies and rural roads, but this project is not within the country estates area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schneider.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin, so we're talking about following the standard that we put in place. I don't think we all read that standard very much. I mean, this property is basically not in the country estates, it's on the other side, but I've lived in both the country estates where we didn't have sidewalks, and it worked out very well for us. I mean, we had the curb and gutter obviously there to make sure the water went off and everybody runs. I live actually in Heritage Palm Sound, which is a gated community, which we have sidewalks, but nobody walks on the sidewalks because they don't want to walk up and down as they're going through and through where the entry goes in. So, everybody walks on the street. And because we're a community as a whole, everybody basically knows we don't have a lot of speed. You always have a few people. Is it an issue not to have sidewalks except for our rules? What you're basically saying is basically the ordinance that we Agreed to.
Councilmember, you're putting me in the role of playing city engineer, which I should not do, but I'll give you my planning answer.
Okay.
So the council prioritized connectability and safe connections as part of the general plan when you adopted in 2019. So this particular policy reflects that intent. It was indicated earlier that during the planning commission meeting, I had indicated the council could consider waiving this requirement. You have discretion to waive that. You have to make appropriate findings. You might find that what the applicant is proposing as alternatives meets the intent of that policy, which is safe movements within this particular development. The goal of that particular policy was to promote a safe pedestrian walking environment. Again, you could make an interpretation that the applicant is achieving that if you felt that was the case.
Yeah, and I feel he has. I feel he's made the adoption to be able to do it. I think this property looks to be the one that would be in concurrence with it. It's a gated community. It's got so many houses. They're in phases. You know, at the same time, when I lived at the Orchard, it was the same way. But I think looking at it, it doesn't stop connectivity. It doesn't stop people from walking, you know, to place. It just doesn't have a designated area. I've seen many of the sidewalks that we have in a public setting, on public streets. Yes, absolutely. I'd say you have to do it. On a private setting like this, I don't have a problem with the applicant making the extra changes to be able to do it. And I think that's something we should look at the policy to make sure that if it is something like that, we have the discretion to be able to go back and forth and do it. There should be some other alternatives. I think he meets the goal of what I would appreciate. And I have no problem changing it to allow no sidewalks.
I want to also remind the council that this is a family community, and where there's families, we need safe routes to schools. And that means at least one side of the street needs to have a sidewalk. And if we're going to move toward pedestrian friendly and connectivity, we need to stick to the standards that we adopted with the general plan and not deviate from them when it comes to connectivity.
Rose?
I completely agree with Councilmember Ramos and me. We need at least one side of the street needs to have sidewalks on there, particularly in the family environments, and all neighborhoods really are some level of a family environment. It's safer. It's absolutely safer. I mean, we're putting in streets, granted it's not gated, but we're putting in streets there in the older downtown area so that kids can get to school. I think sidewalks are a very important component of this.
Thank you. And I don't disagree with part of it, but we're talking private streets compared to public streets. And there's a difference and an issue on it. Like I said, I live in a community now that has sidewalks on both sides in a 55 and older community that doesn't use the sidewalks ever. And there's nothing unsafe about it. So I do agree with you to an extent, but I think which side do you put it on? And do the people walk across the street to get to the sidewalk, to walk to wherever they got to go, to be on the sidewalk from the other side? So I disagree on certain ones. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I think one of the most common complaints that I get from residents is that their neighborhoods don't have sidewalks, and that their children walking to school are more in danger in those areas that don't have sidewalks. So I'd also be in favor of at least one side of the street having sidewalks.
Okay, and I would concur with that. I think the policy was put in place for a reason, and that is to enhance the communities for safety purposes and connectability, giving pedestrians a safe thoroughfare to, move about in the community, whether it's private or public. Now, I do agree with Councilmember Miller about this being private. However, I think everyone should be held to the same standard, and that's governed by our general plan. So I would be in favor of having a sidewalk on one side. Now, what side or how we do that, that's not up to me, but I would just be in favor of that. And I don't know how we would proceed with that. It's already
listed as a condition of approval, and the discretion on what side of the street would be up to the developer.
Okay. So with no other comments, I would entertain a motion.
I would make the motion, but I don't have it in front of me. So is there?
Got it. I'll motion to adopt resolution number 10276, adopting a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the Cocoa Palm Single Family Residential Project located northeast of the Avenue 50 and Jackson Street intersection, and adopt resolution number 10277, approving tentative tract map 38072 to subdivide 38 acres into 173 single-family residential parcels for the Cocoa Palms single-family residential project.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz and a second by Councilmember Holmes. Can I get a vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Mayor Furman.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Thank you. And if I may, council and public, just deviate from the agenda for a quick second. We do have our reps from the District Attorney's Office here for the presentation of the proclamation of the National Victims' Right Week. So we like to revisit that and get them the proclamation and take some photos and recognize that important week. So, Mayor Pro Tem, yeah. Welcome to our council meeting, and we have a proclamation we'd like to present to you from the District Attorney's Office for National Crime Victims Week, and I'll read this to you and then we'll get to voting. So, and it says, whereas victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal levels that establish essential rights for victims, and whereas we must help victims access the justice, assistance, and support they need to rebuild their lives, acknowledging that 2022's National Crime Victims Week, Rights Week theme is rights, access, and equality for all victims. And whereas honoring the rights of victims, including the right to be heard, to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect, rebuilds their trust in the criminal justice system and social services system. And whereas National Crime Victims Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit, assuring the accessible, appropriate, and trauma-informed services and offered to all victims of crime. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Wayman Furman, Mayor of the City of Indio, along with the Indio City Council, do hereby proclaim April 24th to April 30th, 2022 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, reaffirming the City of Indio's commitment to supporting the Riverside County District Attorney's Office, Division of Victim Services, and the criminal justice response that accesses all victims of crime throughout the year, and expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those committee members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response. So thank you for your service. If you have any comments, would you like to share with our public or council about this week, the importance of this week?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank the council members and the community and City of Indio for recognizing this important week and the work that we do day in and day out. I know these last couple of years have been not as normal as we could. We look forward to having our in-person vigil next year and honoring those who lost their lives as a result of crime and supporting the survivors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, can they have their proclamation? All right, thank you. Thank you for your service. All righty, we'll move on to item number 11, which are public comments for items not on the agenda. Clerk, do we have anyone online?
There are none.
There are no public comments, and so I have no request to speak. And before we move to adjourn, I'd like to ask the council, do they have any comments they'd like to add before we adjourn the meeting? No? All right, our next council meeting is May 4th, 2022. And that will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.